So could you also tell us a time when like some of the challenges came up or like you just became not really motivated, and how did you motivate yourself?
Originally, it was hard to get myself to deep focus. Honestly, I'd say my motivator is just I want to, make sure I'm not letting this year go by without actually doing anything. I would just say wanting to prove, that taking this gap year didn't make me lazy and keeping myself committed.
Is there any specific external factors or like people that you look up to that, motivates you to continue, pursuing this startup?
I would say my parents, just not wanting to disappoint them. I want to make them proud. One of my co-founders started the idea part-time for a couple of months. He wasn't able to commit to it, but since I joined about I'd say 4 months ago, I've been working on it full time. And in terms of the future, I see myself here for a while, at least until I go to college. Our essential mission is to make it so that it's easy for beginners to get good at poker. One thing a lot of poker beginners face, which I also faced when I got into the game, was there's no tool that is accessible to beginners. The conventional or industry standard tools that are in poker are super complex and they're super hard to understand. And they sort of assume that you already have poker knowledge if you're using them.
So like speaking about parents, what did they think initially with, this whole gap year conversation? Like when you told them that you're gonna be like, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna take a gap year from high school. Like what was their overall reactions and how do you talk them through?
Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast. Today we have Omar Siala here, who is the co-founder of PokerGPT, and he's also taking a gap year from college right now while participating in Buildspace Season 5. From Omar today, we will be learning how he's building in such a unique niche while taking a gap year to pursue his dreams. So let's get straight into the pod.
So Omar, why don't you tell us a bit about how you started your startup journey?
Hi. I'd say halfway through my senior year, I was applying to colleges, and I noticed that the price of college counselors and SAT coaches were super expensive. So me and a couple of my friends made an alternative where we would connect high school students to college students for personalized advice from someone your age. So it was sort of like a marketplace where you could, if I want to get into Stanford, I can meet with Stanford students or people that went to Stanford and ask them for advice on my essays, activities section, things about the majors there. So I did that for a couple of months. And then I eventually stopped because I had a lot of AP exams. And when I came back, I wasn't as interested in it. So at the time, I was also getting into poker. So I met a couple of my other co-founders. I've been working on PokerGPT since then.
Awesome. Sounds super interesting. So before we delve more into your story, a bit about my story. As a kid, personally, I was really, invested in football community, started 2 YouTube channels oriented about football cards and esports, a couple thousand subs here and there. That was about like COVID period, right? And then I decided to explore other ventures as well. So actually not too long ago, about a year, I started my first actual business, e-commerce brand, switch over to SEO and lead gen agency afterwards, after finding out I didn't really like posting, the TikTok videos. Scaled the lead gen agency to a couple figures, work with tons of B2B tech SaaS clients. Recently actually left my agency about a month ago and currently focused on building this podcast and also doing something similar to your previous project and building a social networking platform specifically for Gen Z founders, which we can also talk about later on, and also exploring more content generation. So diving deeper into your journey, you've taken a gap year from high school, right? So considering less than 5% of high school graduates decide to choose this path according to Google, do you see this becoming a more conventional trend? And could you tell me specific encounters or occasions in particular that made you choose this option?
Yeah. So the reason why I took a gap year was because of tuition here in the US. I don't qualify for financial aid. And the schools that I did get into last year would require me to take out a loan. So I took a gap year to take a bet on myself. And I'm trying to pursue competitive fencing in hopes to get a scholarship next year. And also I wanted to make some money before I was to go to college. So for me, it was all the entire motive was just financial. But I know many people that take gap years to help out their family or travel, or religious purposes. So there are many different things you can do with it. In my opinion, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a gap year, right? there's nothing wrong with being 1 year behind and taking that time to really slow down and figure out what it is you want to do next. Especially if you have a lot of burnout from hustling yourself in high school. So yeah, I can see it being more conventional in the future. I mean, I know for a fact that a couple decades ago it was very weird if someone took a gap year.
Yeah.
And now it's a little bit more normal. So I'm sure that in the future it will become something that many students take. But yeah, I think it's nice.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it being more conventional, especially when many people also they find that building actual projects will, learn more skills than from going to school and studying over there. So in terms of your, day-to-day lifestyle right now, of course, you don't have university anymore. So you have basically control of most of your time. So could you briefly tell us, like, what is your day-to-day lifestyle looking like, and like what do you do in like certain time on like an average day?
Yeah, so one thing I'm very happy about is now I don't have school, I can wake up a little bit later. So I wake up around 9 a.m. And I immediately just condition myself. I stretch, I go on a run, I go to the gym. And after that, I sort of take the morning easy. I've been getting into trading recently, teaching myself how to do it. So I usually just, look through, see if there's anything interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 12, I begin work. So I'm obviously at PokerGPT. So we're currently working on a few things that take up, many hours of my time. So yeah, I'd say from 12 to 5, I'm just working. That's just like my deep focus time. And then around 5, I usually start getting ready for fencing. And I leave the house around 6 and I'm back at maybe 10 p.m. And then I eat dinner and then shower and then I'm back to work, really. So I'm keeping myself busy. Yeah, that's like a day to day.
Nice, super clean, super solid. It's a couple hours of deep work. So could you also tell us a time when I guess this schedule didn't really work out for you, like some of the challenges came up, or like you just became not really motivated, and how did you motivate yourself to continue working?
Yeah, I'd say originally it was hard to get myself to deep focus in the mid-afternoon. And honestly, I'd say my motivator is just I want to make sure I'm not letting this year go by without actually doing anything. I obviously took it for a reason, and I don't want to just rot in my room, playing video games or whatever. So I would just say wanting to prove, that taking this gap year didn't make me lazy, and keeping myself committed. Yeah, that's what pushed me.
Yeah, and like in terms of like this motivation, is there any specific external factors or like people that you look up to that motivate you to continue, I guess, pursuing this startup?
I would say my parents, just not wanting to disappoint them, not wanting to just want to make them proud. I'd say, yeah.
Nice. So like speaking about parents, like what did they think initially with this whole gap year conversation? Like when you told them that you're gonna be like, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna take a gap year from high school. Like what was their overall reactions, and how do you talk them through it?
I think they understood why I was taking it, and they agreed as to like the reasons, which is I didn't want to take out the loans for college. So they supported it as long as I kept myself productive and I wasn't just lazy. It was a pretty weird idea to them at first, but I think that as they got a feeling for it, they become more okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Interesting. So just speaking about like different communities as well, of course, like school is one of the communities. So you've been actually part of Buildspace. So what was your overall experience with Buildspace? Like, was it a life-changing community? Like, did you meet friends who you're still connected with?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, during the 6 weeks of the actual program, I didn't really meet that many people through it. But I went to the live event in San Francisco at the end of it, which is where I met a lot of really interesting people. And I've definitely made a few friends from there. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I was really sad to see it, shut down. But yeah, it was great.
Like delving deeper into like Buildspace, like what are three, I would say, like top aspects that you really enjoy about this community?
I would say the first was everyone was just doing their own thing, and it was just really cool to see how different everyone's ideas were. You know, when I went to the live event, like the people that I got closest to, everyone was doing something different. You know, some guy was doing like what you're doing. He's like running a podcast for like founders. Yeah. Another guy was building like a news like chat. So just seeing how everyone could pursue their own idea to 100%, and connect, you know, at the end, was really cool. I'd say that was definitely the biggest thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, like, talk about more about PokerGPT, since this is the project that you're working on. Like, what's the overall timeline? What's, I guess, like the overall end goal of the product?
Yeah, so one of my co-founders started the idea part-time for a couple of months. He was busy with other things, so he wasn't able to go, you know, he wasn't able to commit to it. But since I joined about, I'd say 4 months ago, I've been working full-time on it. And in terms of the future, I see myself here for a while, at least until, you know, I go to college. So our essential mission is to make it so that it's easy for beginners to get good at poker. One thing a lot of poker beginners face, which I also faced when I got into the game, was there's no tool that is accessible to beginners. The conventional or industry standard tools that are in poker are super complex and they're super hard to understand. And they sort of assume that you already have poker knowledge if you're using them. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to translate all of that, you know, complex charts and numbers into natural language, making it easy for a beginner to understand the game. And especially at a time like this where the game is really growing fast, the need for a tool like PokerGPT grows.
Got it. So like with the overall revenue model, like what is it, like what's the overall business model right now? Like have you considered that?
Yeah, so right now we have a monthly SaaS subscription for $20 a month, which gives the user unlimited access to PokerGPT. We also have a free version, but it has limited access.
Got it. So like delving deeper into the algorithms, like what's the overall, I guess, like tech stack that you guys are using right now with like machine learning?
So we're using Next.js for everything front end. In terms of like how we're training our model, we're currently using the OpenAI API. And what me and my co-founders did was we trained the model on a bunch of past poker hands, and we've given it analysis, and through this, it's just gained a ridiculously strong understanding of the game. We've done a lot of other things, which I don't want to, you know, completely share, but through like the culmination of all our efforts, PokerGPT is now unbelievably good at poker, which is our goal. So yeah.
So initially, like, how did you find your co-founders as well? Like, was it from an online community, or was it Buildspace?
Yeah, so I met my co-founder, which is my CEO right now, Victor. He was playing in a high stakes poker game that was being live streamed online, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Hustlers Casino Live, and he was wearing a little PokerGPT hat. So I saw the hat. And I reached out. I originally was like, "Oh, what's PokerGPT?" So I searched it up online, did some research, and I was working on my own poker startup at the time, which was a little bit different than PokerGPT. So I found his Twitter and DM'd him a bunch of advice and feedback I had on the platform. And from there, we connected, and we realized that our goals aligned. So we decided to partner up, pretty much, and work on PokerGPT.
Awesome. So delving deeper into like this whole outreach or like networking advice, like for someone who also has like a similar vision or similar alignment, like what are some factors that you personally like assess as well before like merging two startups together?
Just making sure that you're committed to what you're working on. You know, making sure that it isn't something that you're going to give up in the next few days. I would say obviously sharing a common goal in the future is important, but also making sure that you guys are motivated or are disciplined enough to continue working on that idea no matter how hard things get, because obviously things are going to get hard at some point. So
got it. So could you also like share some, I guess, like fascinating stories or some memorable stories of you guys like building PokerGPT? Like what came up like in the process of startup?
yeah, so when we first decided to work on this together, I was actually in SF for the Buildspace event, and he already knew our other co-founder, which was our CTO, and they pretty much like told me like, what if you just came to Toronto? So they're both based in Toronto, and they actually have an office in Toronto, and I was in Boston, and they pretty much told me like, you could go back to Boston and work remotely, but what if you came to Toronto and worked with us like in person? So I booked a flight, and a week later I was in Toronto for the first time with pretty much no plans, and I stayed for about a month, where I was just working on the idea before my fencing season started. So it was obviously a pretty spontaneous thing, but I definitely don't regret it. I learned a lot, and it was a great experience.
I mean, what happened after? Like, are you also planning to go back to Toronto or?
Yeah, so as of this moment, I can't because I'm doing fencing, and all my work is here. But in the future, I definitely want to go back. I really liked it there, and being close to your founders is just super helpful. You're definitely much more productive. Like you're much more understanding of where everyone is in their current activities or what they're currently working on. So yeah, I definitely have visions to come back soon.
It makes sense. So talking about like, you being in Toronto and things like that, how have like the overall startup scene look like for yourself, like being in different places? Of course, like you were in SF for a while and then you went back to Toronto and then you are now in Massachusetts. So like how's the overall startup scene comparison between these three places?
Well, I would definitely say that San Francisco has a startup scene that nothing can really compare to.
Yeah.
The entire like Bay Area is just like, it's just like everyone you talk to pretty much is like a founder or an investor or working at a startup. So there's not much really like, if you want to work on a startup and you can go to SF, you should go to SF. There's not really another city.
Yeah.
Toronto was also great. I think it's kind of like the SF of Canada in a way. There were a lot of founders that I met while I was there. I would play poker with other founders. So SF was also great. I would say Boston isn't really much of one. Boston is more of just like a corporate. It's a big corporate environment, but there's also many schools like Harvard and MIT where there's a lot of students there that are interested in startups. So I'd say all three they have their pros and cons, but there definitely are the differences. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Yeah, definitely Bay Area is definitely king here in with startups. So like transitioning over to your overall like fencing career, like, how is that currently going? Like how much, obviously you're getting 4 hours of practice every single day, but what would be some of your future goals with fencing, and like how are you balancing, I guess, like focusing on research on fencing, like practicing fencing and also creating your poker GPT?
Yeah, I think just dividing my time in a way that's organized is super helpful. Knowing when I'm doing what in advance allows me to plan my day, and always like, continue working on like a stable pace. My future goals for fencing, honestly, is just to get a scholarship. I really love the sport. I actually started the sport just to play with my little brother who was also doing fencing, just a way for us to get closer. But in doing that, I really enjoy the sport, and I want to do it through college, and honestly, like later on as like a hobby. It's a really great sport. I recommend anyone try it if they can. But yeah, in terms of dividing my time, just knowing when I'm doing what in advance helps me plan out my day. And honestly, I haven't found much trouble. I look at fencing as more of just like, something that I do every night. to keep myself active, keep myself in shape, but also have fun. There's a social aspect to it as well.
Nice. So have there been a time when you had to like make a difficult decision between like fencing or like doing something else as well?
I mean, yeah, moving back to Boston from Toronto was only because of fencing. If I didn't have fencing, I would have stayed in Toronto probably through the year. So I definitely had some tough decisions, but I ended up leaning towards fencing. It's the reason why I took the gap year, and I want to honor that. So yeah, but I mean, as time goes on, I think my commitment to fencing might go down, and as a result, I might stop spending as much time in it. But we'll see.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Super exciting. So like going back to the point of taking a gap year, I'm pretty sure many people definitely as moving forward and startups are evolving, the online space is basically like many different founders, right? Doing this, doing that. Many people would choose to take a gap year. So like based on your overall trends and patterns that you see, like is there some specific traits that you think would make a successful gap year student compared to like other people who take a gap year, or what would be some of your core advice for those who are looking to take a gap year?
I would say there are a lot of people that take gap years, but the most important thing is having discipline, right? You're not going to have the structure that you had when you were in school, right? No one's telling you have to be here at 8 a.m., go here at 10 a.m., come back home at 3 p.m., go to these clubs, right? So your time is obviously have a lot more time, but the important thing is knowing how to manage it and knowing how to keep yourself on track, right? It's super easy for someone to tell themselves, oh, I want to take a gap year and do all these things, but when the gap year actually starts, they just sit in bed all day watching Netflix or playing video games. So having discipline and knowing, prioritizing your goals is the most important thing. You don't want to waste a year. And I do think that if you take a gap year and you have discipline, you will get a lot of things out of it that you didn't have before, and it will prepare you for college in a much better way.
Yeah, definitely. So setting your own timetable. So speaking about timetable, did you previously also have like multiple versions of timetable? Because for me personally, on my schedule, like I would say after a couple months, things will change. You have new morning routines, new nighttime routines. You learn things online and things like that. So how have that journey for your timetable been for yourself?
Yeah, so I have these I just have paper, right? I just take a piece of paper, and then in the morning, right after I wake up and eat, I'll write down everything I want to do, and what's most urgent. What do I need to do first? What's time sensitive? What do I need to finish by today? And I pretty much just plan my day on those things. Obviously, I want to make sure I'm always staying active, so making sure I always go to the gym in the morning, or take my dog on a walk, go on a run. But once I get those things out of the way, I'm just planning my day on what's most important. So yeah, I would just say there's no reason to limit yourself to a certain calendar for how your day goes every single day. Like, it's not going to be like that. It's too general. Every day is different in some way. So just taking the 10 minutes before you do anything in the morning to figure out what your priorities are for the day will help you a lot. At least in my experience.
Yeah, I really like the point that you brought up there, because every single day, like, you never know what you encounter, right? So, like, just going back on the points when, some challenges that you face, like, obviously every single day, like, there might be days when you decide to, I guess, like, be lazy. Like, everyone has their days when they're, trying to scroll social media, just deciding to give up and not really doing anything on that day. And you just realize at the end of the day, you've done nothing, right? And you're disappointed and things like that. What were your strategies to like overcome this and just falling into the loophole of just saying, oh my God, look at today, look at yesterday, I really wasn't productive. So, you're just going to continue falling in the hole.
I would say my motivator, I don't know if it's probably not good, probably bad, but it's just like anyone I don't like in my life or I don't agree with in my life, I just tell myself, like, if I'm going to be lazy, that's what they're going to want from me. They want me to be lazy, right? So I just tell myself, like, prove them wrong. Don't be a bum and like let them watch you and laugh, right? Instead, do your work and, you know, prove yourself. So yeah, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to be super old and wish I didn't, you know, I don't want to be like 80 looking back at my life and saying, oh, if I was more disciplined in this gap year, I could have done a lot more, which obviously isn't going to happen. But, you know, just keeping myself accountable and, you know, not wanting to waste any time.
Makes sense. So maybe like printing a photo of the people that you don't really like, and just sticking it right in front of right in front of the wall, so then you can like straight look at them. Super interesting. So, like, summarizing everything, what are some future goals or future visions that you have? Like, let's just say you get the scholarship, right, and you go to college and things like that. Of course, I know many unexpected things can happen. Maybe COVID round 2 comes up or something, but like in general, like what do you want to do with your life? Like what's the overall vision, purpose here?
I would say for the longest time, I wanted to be a startup founder. I want to work at a startup. But I think working hands-on an idea like PokerGPT has sort of humbled me on how difficult it actually is. And through reflecting on, you know, how everything's gone so far, honestly, I'm not too sure if I still want to do it. I think that this gap year is providing me in a way is like also like just a reflection, right? Like everyone's like, oh, I have a big idea. I'm going to work on it and it's going to be huge, but it's much harder than it looks. It's much harder than it seems at first. And I think a gift, or I'm really grateful to have realized that earlier on. So in terms of my future, I would say, I'm honestly not sure. Trading is trading with math is super interesting to me. So, you know, anything that in that realm, I'd say the finance tech space, with like just a technical approach to finance is something that I'm really interested in. I've been fascinated by the market since I was a kid. So yeah, if I had to guess, that's where I would go.
Nice. Awesome. So, like, one final thing, which is like, from all of the advice that you've heard, you know, online, like, there's so much different advice. You know, we're in an era where information is just such a heavy thing. Being selective is really key. So, what would be that one biggest advice that you've heard from someone that you really enjoy and that you really live up to?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I wouldn't say there's one piece of advice that's really pushed me. I would just say, commit to something, like even if it's like not comfortable, just do it. It'll probably, you know, whatever, you know, they say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So just do it, and see what happens and reflect on it, and yeah, just don't hesitate. That's my piece of advice. Don't hesitate.
Awesome. Omar, I really appreciate you hopping on the Gen Z Fasting. I'm pretty sure you're an inspiration to many people who are trying to consider gap year. As you know, we've definitely all heard from the news, right? Like this whole college debt and things like that are racking up. Like people are falling into this trap of just not being able to pay off college debt. And was it really worth it at the end to go to college? For some, obviously, yes, when you're doing like a medical degree. For others, not really. But you're just really a true inspiration for people who are considering this option, taking gap year. So Omar, really wish you the best of luck with PokerGPT and everything you're building. Hopefully you find success and also get that scholarship. And to everyone listening, feel free to contact Omar. I'll link all of his descriptions in the bio. You know, one of the things with this podcast that I really want to be building and really is connecting is just speaking to other people, right? So for example, if you're in a position of deciding, you know, whether to take a gap year or if you're super interested in poker as well, you should be reaching out to Omar here, right? Because he'll be more than willing to probably hop on, you know, a 5-minute conversation or, you know, just a coffee chat, speak with you. So yeah. Other than that, hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Until the next one, peace out.
Bye. Thank you.